So hi, welcome to End Credit Reviews. On episode of After the Credits on End Credit Reviews is Tyler this time from End Credit Reviews, and this is my review on The King's Man. So this is a movie that has been delayed a few years back. It was supposed to come out, I think, back in 2019, and then part of the reason why it got delayed was because of Disney buying out 20th Century Fox, and the other half of it was because the pandemic constantly kept moving this movie back, and it's finally out now. So The King's Man is about our main character named Conrad, played by Harris Dickinson, wants to participate in World War I, but his father, Orlando, played by Ralph Fiennes, is someone who is reluctant, someone who has known the harshness of conflict, and because of the tragic loss of his wife, has decided to become a pacifist and doesn't want his son to engage in that sort of deal. However, he has his own secret group, who eventually names the Kingsmen, to engage in trying to contain peace against a secret organization that is trying to plunge the world into World War I, which eventually, of course, this does happen. Now, this movie definitely does play very loose with World War I, with history in general, which I'll get to later in this video. Now, the thing is that I absolutely love World War I. I think it's such an underrated war. It doesn't get talked about much. However, I'm happy that in recent years there's been more talk about this war. I've enjoyed the video game Battlefield 1, and I also love the movie 1917 that really should have won Best Picture, not Parasite, which is just an overrated movie nonetheless. But anyway, so with the main cast here, I really like the general cast, and that I don't really know exactly where Harris Dickinson's from. At first I thought maybe he was one of the guys from 1917. It just reminded me, at least in the face, he kind of reminded me of one of the two main characters from 1917. But one I definitely recognize a lot was Digimon Hansu as Shola. I apologize if I butchered that name in that, but the thing is, he's a really good actor. I liked him in movies like Gladiator and Blood Diamond, and of course, Never Back Down is such a guilty pleasure movie of mine. When he's like training with one of the guys in the movie, I was just thinking of Never Back Down a bit, just laughing at that guilty pleasure movie of mine. And also, of course, Ray Fiennes has been in a lot of really excellent movies himself. He, of course, played Voldemort in the Harry Potter franchise. He voiced Ramesses in Prince of Egypt. And he was in a similar movie called Sunshine, which took place roughly around World War I, World War II. And, of course, another one I recognize, of course, was Gemma Arterton as Polly. And this is an actress I haven't seen in a long time in a mainstream movie. She was in, like, Prince of Persia, Clash of Titans, Hansel Gretel Witch Hunters. Yeah, not very good movies, but I think she should have played Lara Croft in the Tomb Raider reboot and not the actress who played her. And the only reason why she got cast, in my opinion, was because she won the Academy Award. It's similar to why they cast Emma Stone to play Cruella de Vil in the Cruella movie, opposed to someone like Elizabeth Debicki, who looks and sounds a lot more like Cruella de Vil, and she's a good actress too. But I just feel like sometimes there is that bias and that leverage just because someone won an Academy Award that they tend to get more close to the front of the line opposed to other actresses, or actors for that matter, who are more qualified for the part. But yeah, I really liked seeing Gemma Arterton in this movie. She was very fun and very likable too. And this is what I think about Gemma Arterton. And we also have Reef Iffens, I'm sorry if I butchered that name, as Gregory Rasputin. Now, the thing is that I have seen various movies involving the real historical figure Rasputin. I made a video on it recently, and I'm convinced this is probably the most cartoony depiction of Rasputin I've seen in a movie, more so than how he was shown in the Anastasia movie from the 90s, the animated one, where he has the green vial and breaks into a song number with his white pet bat. And yeah, I mean, there's so many things about this character where I was just like, kind of grossed out about, but also I'm like, I'm sorry, but how much of a comedy is this, and how much are you supposed to take this seriously? The first half of this movie I just didn't like that much. I think it was just kind of generic. The pacing wasn't that good, and I thought it was redundant that the father character was so much of a pacifist. It's like, okay, he's a pacifist because his wife died, I get that, but then they also build upon like, oh, I'm sorry for all the pain and suffering I've caused for my country and that in other foreign countries. And that's kind of redundant because like the death of his wife was good enough reason to stop doing that and become a pacifist. But adding that to it as well is just like way too much redundant. It's like either choose one or the other. I think just choosing both of them was just way too much and just, again, redundant. And I know I've said that several times probably in this video already, but I rest my case. But I will say the second half of this movie is when it gets pretty fun and very enjoyable, and what you expect to see from the Kingsman movies. They're entertaining and fun movies. I really like the part where Conrad's in World War I fighting people when it comes to this knife fight that happens in no man's land was pretty well choreographed and very entertaining to see. And something happens to him as well. I'm not going to spoil it, but it was like my jaw dropped when it happened. And also to seeing the climax of the movie where the characters come together and they kind of become the Kingsmen in a way, that was very fun. That was very enjoyable. I really liked that a lot. And yeah, I think I'm going to go into spoiler territory right now. This is just talking about all of the historical inaccuracies with this movie. So anyway, just fast forward to this part if you don't want to be spoiled whatsoever. So when it came to the assassination of the heir to the Austrian throne, now that really did happen. The assassin just so happened to get lucky by shooting that guy and his wife while they happened to be driving by. Although he wasn't alone in the assassination, he had a few other people, part of a group called the Black Hand, which had some Masonic connections. And he's one of those historical figures who never miss a shot, just like John Wilkes Booth or Alec Baldwin. So when it came to the assassination of Rasputin, so they show it was at the Ustav Palace, but the problem was that they show it as it was some kind of like big party, but it was actually more like a small and private one. They do show the part of him like getting shot and stabbed and drowned in that, but they don't show like the drowning is the part that kills him, even though historically it was the drowning. And I mean, they do bring up the poisoning part, but Rasputin was never poisoned because the people in charge with poisoning his food or his wine, for example, never put any poison in there to begin with. And also they show like the Tsar being in Russia during the middle of World War I, despite the fact he was actually in the front lines when this was happening, and not necessarily back in St. Petersburg or known as Petrov when the war was happening. And also they show when Nicholas II was abdicating, they show him resigning inside one of his palaces while Vladimir Lenin takes the paper of his resignation, and the Bolshevik people are there cheering on. But the problem is that again, Nicholas II was on a train when he abdicated, and that was towards the provisional government. It wasn't until months later that the Bolsheviks and Vladimir Lenin came into play with the October Revolution in the later half of 1917. This movie is a very loose take on history. It's kind of like the Assassin's Creed video games, where it's more about the entertainment value and the history is kind of secondary, and I understand that. And at the end of the day, it's a fun movie. It's enjoyable too, and I do slightly prefer it over the second one. There are some really dumb moments in that one. I do strongly prefer the first one over this one. So overall, the first half was not very good, kind of generic, kind of lousy, but the second half is where it really picks up. It's very fun, well made, and very enjoyable to watch, and I would sort of recommend watching this movie if you like the previous Kingsman movies in a way, or like to see a kind of a different take on World War I. But yeah, I think the best parts of this movie are in the second half of it, which is kind of a shame it's not like evenly spread out like the first movie was. So as for The King's Man, I would give it about 2.5 stars out of 4. So anyway, this is Tyler from Anchor Reviews, and I hope you enjoy this episode of After the Credits on Anchor Reviews, and I hope to make a lot more in the future. Please like and subscribe.